Hey, can you guys hear
Well,
me?
yeah, we can
There he
hear you.
is.
You look
Hey,
fantastic. You sound fantastic.
Got a real
Welcome to
professional
TBPN
over here.
Live.
that's the least I could do if this is what I do all day.
This is fantastic. Great to have you here. Can you kick us off with a little introduction? What do you do? What's your name? Who are you?
Well, it's great to be on the Fortress of Finance.
Thank you.
Yes.
Um, no, I'm the founder of Car Dealership Guy. You've probably
Great.
seen me on Twitter if you're
Oh
if
yeah.
you're listening to this right now. We are the leading content, news, and insights platform for car dealers.
Cool.
Didn't start that way. We were very consumer based, but it's been a couple years where I've really just shifted to focusing on the industry. And today, we're pretty much offering anything for dealers to come and learn, kind of stay informed, get ahead. Really, just trying to make a better industry with the kind of ultimate vision that if we can create a better dealership experience and educate the dealers and kind of democratize knowledge, then the consumer experience would be better and everybody wins. So that's kind of like the utopian vision.
I know very
Amazing.
little about car dealerships, so I bet my
Yeah,
questions would be silly.
maybe give us the crash course history, your personal history
Yeah,
in
that'd
the
be great.
industry leading up to this, because this is
Yeah.
not the kind of business that you start, just because you had a good X account. I imagine you experienced a lot of the turmoil of the industry and the good and the bad.
Yeah, so it's quite the opposite. But I'll give you like the short version. So I was a dealer. I grew up in used car business. Father had a small used car dealership, so that was where I spent most of my time. In 2018, I got the bug. I said, "There's no way that we're still selling cars this way, right? Everything's done online. Why do I have to? Why do people have to come to my dealership? Why can't I expand virtually and whatnot?" And so I took this traditional dealership and I said, we're going to build a better way to buy a car. We're going to do it 100% online.
Mhm.
At the time, Carvana had just gone public, but it was still kind of like a nascent thing, kind of selling cars online. And so I actually raised capital and we transformed into a venture backed online auto retailer. We started building out our own website, our technology, our platform. And I spent 5 years doing this. So we were completely vertically integrated this entire time. So as we were building this business, we were acquiring the warehouses, building up the logistics network, and actually retailing vehicles online from what was a small used car dealership. It was a crazy experience. I mean, we raised lots of capital throughout the time and grew the business to close to like $100 million in annual sales.
Wow.
And in end of I want to say it was 2021 when rates started rising. Things got really tough.
Yeah.
We spent the next 18 months, we couldn't raise more capital. Business was obviously, the burn was accelerating. And we kind of had this like we're facing this existential point in our life. And the next 18 months were just brutal. We ended up shutting that business down. We tried to pivot to private equity. We almost got acquired, but that didn't work out. And in the meantime, I sort of had this like, anonymous Twitter account where I was just tweeting, just trying to stay sane, be a little creative, but really just sharing kind of my thoughts. And it blew up like crazy, right?
Yep.
So I don't remember when I launched a Twitter account exactly. I think it was like early
Yeah,
22.
for anybody just on audio, he's got almost 500,000 followers on X, which is the equivalent of 50 billion followers on Instagram.
Pretty much.
No, it's a big
Yeah,
number.
I mean, it was definitely very like you're right. It's very difficult today. It's completely much more difficult, I would say, even unless you're putting out slop. But I mean, like high quality followers is a very tough thing to do, right?
Totally.
You got to put out insight. But that's essentially what I was doing. I was just sharing my knowledge and experiences that I've gone through. And then after we ended up closing down the business completely. This was like, like I said, 18, 24 months later. I said, I don't exactly know what's in store for my next thing, but I do know that there's a thirst for this knowledge, right? When I launched this account, people didn't understand what the hell is going on with prices and inventory was all over the place. And it wasn't just consumers, it was dealers themselves as well.
Yeah.
And so I said, there's something here. And so I formed a B2B media company. And we can talk about, like, I went down the holdco route and all that stuff that Sean Puri spoke about on your podcast the other day as well. We can chat about that as well. But that was essentially how I fell into this business. So I went from like a traditional family business to a venture-backed tech business, right? Raised like $60 million and all that hoopla. And now we're like a bootstrapped media brand. It's completely different things, but it's been a fun learning experience.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on now is just to get a sense of really on the consumer side, how are how are people behaving in the market? What are the you guys get a lot of data from dealers that are, in your community. And I think it's a good signal of sort of how consumers are feeling. It's obviously sort of this like shaky time broadly in the market, but how are dealers doing broadly? What is, consumer sentiment looking like? And then I want to kind of get into some individual brands and potentially ask you about the EV market and some other stuff, as well as later I'd love to get your thoughts on the war between platforms like Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids and all that stuff. But maybe start with a kind of a market update. What's happening sort of on the ground today?
Yeah. So look, the market has been, I would say, very consistently improving and just becoming more pro-consumer, right? We're definitely in more of a buyer's market today, although it's still very divided. Like if you go to a Toyota dealership, they are still at like 30 plus day supply, which is roughly half the level of supply they should have for current demand. And so Toyota and Lexus are sort of the anomaly here. I'd say the majority of the brands out there are oversupplied right now, which is simply a good thing for consumers.
Sure.
Because it means you have more negotiation leverage. It means that brands will put more incentives on these vehicles so that they'll sell them faster. And I would say they're roughly like 30% oversupplied. So it's not, these numbers are not low. We're sort of in this phase right now where the incentives are only going to keep getting better, because the reality is the inventory is out there and it needs to move. Now it is spring season, which is typically a pretty good time of year for dealers, right? Most people are getting their tax refunds and whatnot, and they're shopping. So there has been a bump in business over the last couple of weeks, but other than that, I mean, I don't expect the spring bump to last that long. It never really lasts that long. And, it's a very temporary thing.
When is the
but
best
look, in a
time to
nutshell, go ahead.
Oh yeah, when is the best time to buy a car if you're a consumer? And like, are there any like tricks to getting a good deal? It feels like a very opaque process for most
Everyone asks
consumers.
that question. Look, yes, you might get luck out if you go like, end of month, end of quarter, because there's these things called stair step programs where, it's like, hey, if you sell, I'm just making it up, 100 cars, you'll get an extra, X amount of dollars as a dealer, right? So if I'm trying to get that stair step, if I'm trying to unlock that, that benefit from the automaker, then I'm going to maybe even sell a couple cars at a loss at the end of the month because I want to hit my number. Now, many manufacturers have moved away from those. Many dealers don't even participate in them.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, in theory, you could do that. I would honestly tell you that a better way would be to simply see what brand right now is most oversupplied. Now, you might not like that answer because maybe you don't want to drive an Infinity or whatever, is the most oversupplied at that current moment. But reality is like, that's where you will have the most negotiation leverage as a consumer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Tesla as a stock has been down tremendously over the last month. Even I think it's down like 35%. As at the same time, we're seeing more than ever on the roads, but they're obviously, the stock pressures in part, there's probably a political angle. There's broadly the sort of moat they had around EVs has been eliminated as other manufacturers have entered. What do you see in store for, Tesla? I know they're verticalized, so there's not like Tesla dealer owners on your platform. But what is the future of the Tesla brand in the near term? In your view, you see sales performance, continuing to slide, or is there? John has joked a lot on the show, obviously, completely joking that like they should come out with a gated manual transmission with a combustion engine.
Naturally aspirated V12, ideally, in the Roadster. The Roadster's been delayed so much. Let's just put a carbureted V12 in there. Let's get the Countach engine in there.
Look, I think first, if you look at EVs in general, right, the pendulum swung too far over the last couple of years. So these manufacturers had all these crazy proclamations, right? We're going to do X amount of EVs, or whatever, X percentage of our production will be EVs and sales. And the problem was that EV demand simply was way behind.
Yep.
So like Ford was the prime example, where they were kind of producing all these vehicles and people didn't want them, right? Now, demand has been growing very consistently and linearly. Like it hasn't gone exponential. Like their demand is still growing if you look at simply, how many EVs are being sold. But relative to the supply that was produced and what was out there, didn't make any sense. So what happened? Well, all these crazy incentives started happening, and all the legacy automakers started to sell all their EVs. But again, they didn't sell them because there was the demand out there was, oh, wow, this is such a great car I wanted. They sold it because, wow, the price is so incredible. This is all I can get. Or maybe this is simply the cheapest monthly payment in the market. I think we forget like how, consumers are practical, right? Like I have a budget and I need to fit into my budget. And if an EV is going to get me within my budget, I will consider an EV. I don't care. Like the average American doesn't care if it's an EV or a gas or it runs on freaking water, right? They need to be able to afford something. So I think that's kind of what happened in the big picture over the last couple of years. Now, look, there's no doubt about it that Tesla has some of the most incredible technology. I don't think the actual interior is anything extravagant. It's actually pretty basic and in many cases subpar, but the tech is incredible. The driving is amazing. I love driving Teslas, and I know that many dealers that I personally know drive Teslas themselves. Many do it just because they want to see what it's like. Others just do it because they genuinely enjoy it. And so I think that the EV market has been very volatile. It's the swings have been very just very rough up and down. I can't say like I'm too concerned long term. I still think that it's going to continue rising very slowly. I think dealers that put focus on it and make the investments to serve more EV customers will do well. Obviously, it's market dependent. If you're in the Midwest, it might be 10 years behind because they simply don't drive as many EVs out there. But in general, I think it's still a smart investment. Tesla's stock price is it's so hard to know, right? Because like what is even driving that? Is it like the Elon political like overhang? I mean, there's so many factors going into that price, the price of that stock, and so it's really hard to tell what's next for it. But I would sort of kind of quiet out the noise, and I still think that EVs are going to continue rising, albeit a lot slower than anyone has predicted and expected, because that's just how consumer adoption takes time.
Outside of Tesla, who's on a tear and who's in trouble in terms of the big car brands right now?
Well, I actually just had one of Nissan's top executives on my podcast today. His name is I forget Shahani is the last name. I forget the first name. But long story short is Nissan is in trouble. Or they've been in trouble recently, right? They've been really losing a lot of money. Vinay Shahani, that's what it was. So Nissan has sort of been the culprit here. And you have to understand the auto business is it cycles and it comes and goes. So like if you look at 21, it was like Ford was in the spotlight, like they were in the penalty box. Then the last couple of years, it's sort of been Stellantis, right? Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. Now it's sort of Nissan because they oversupplied their vehicles. Dealers are not making any money on them. There's way too many dealers for the market share that the brand has. And on top of all of that, because they're oversupplied, because they put because they've been selling these, wholesale to like rental car companies and whatnot, all the consumers are left with lower residual values, right? So now the Nissan that you purchase is worth a lot less. So you're pissed. You don't want to buy another Nissan. That thing loses value very quickly. So they're one of the brands that's really struggled recently, and all that sort of accompanied by a sales decline. But they are they have new leadership in place, and the hope is that they're going to kind of come out of it. I think that their leaders are very convincing and have, just like I said, I haven't spoken to Vinay on the podcast. I mean, he sounded like he knows what he's doing. I mean, the guy's been around the block, worked at Toyota, very, very smart and sharp, but it's not an easy thing to get out of. I mean, do they have the resources to really claw back a significant amount of market share so that the brand is sustainable, or will they have to do some merger like they tried to do with Honda, which didn't really work out, and because of that they actually ended up switching CEOs at Nissan corporate. So that's one of the brands that's struggling pretty bad. Infinity is included in that as well. It's Infinity is under the umbrella, but for the most part I would say like that they're probably the biggest culprit right now in the market.
Talk about the durability of the dealership model. Your audience, a lot of people that are working in the industry, working at dealerships, obviously. But you had a SMB dealership, then you had a venture-backed, online, car sales platform. something about cars, it feels like the sort of final boss of e-commerce, and that, with a car, you're going to spend a lot of money. It's one of the most expensive purchases outside of your home. And so it's really nice to just go to the deal. I like going to a dealership, even if I'm not actually, necessarily in market, just because it's fun to look at cars and stuff like that. But, do you see 50 years from now, are we still going to dealerships to buy cars? My personal bet is yes, because I would rather, even if an online platform says, yeah, we'll send you the car, they'll put it up on a truck, you can drive it, you can buy it there if you want it. I'd still like to go and just see more inventory, right? And experience, more vehicles.
So what's interesting is, I mean, I learned so much selling cars online, like strictly online. First of all, I learned that online car buyers, by a large percentage, are subprime car buyers, right? Subprime consumers. They can't otherwise get approved anywhere else, and this is sort of their last resort. Carvana, CarMax have built such a great mousetrap that it's attracted customers who are also not subprime, right? And I would bet you that if you looked at a graph from when they started till today and just how their customer mix evolved, I would guarantee that, it started out a lot more subprime than it is today. But, that's an example of a brand that's evolved. So look, the dealership is evolving. There's no doubt about that. And if you're a dealer that doesn't think that, your head is in the sand. Um, what we learned through COVID and after COVID is that people still want to interact in person with the dealer. And it's not for the purposes necessarily being with the dealer, but rather you might be making a large purchase. You want to go in, you want to talk to someone, you maybe want to test drive that thing. I mean, there's several things you want to do in person. And so the dealer is simply going to continue evolving just to meet the needs of the customer. There's certain things that the dealers are going to do, which I think are very durable, such as service. The service department is the highest margin profit center in a dealership because, for those that don't know how dealerships work, right, you have many different profit centers. You have parts, you have new car sales, used car sales, service. Service is the highest margin, revenue stream in a dealership. And that is simply something that, won't go away. You're always going to need to get the vehicle serviced somewhere, even if it becomes more fleets, right? If we have all these autonomous vehicles on the road, they're going to need to be serviced somewhere. Or, if it's sort of like Turo, where people are actually acquiring fleets, that will need to be serviced somewhere. So service is I think it has crazy kind of staying power, and it's not going to go anywhere. And the margins are strong. I think new cars it's tricky, right? Because if you look at supply levels right now of new cars in the market, we're not quite at 2019 levels yet, but we're inching up. Many dealers are already breaking even on new cars, depending on the brand. Some are taking losses. And so new cars has never been like a real profit center, right? It's a commoditized product. The good thing about new cars for dealers is that it brings the customers back, right? So if you lease a new vehicle, then they come back to you for service, right? Maybe they trade in their vehicle, then you sell it as a used car, right? You get another client. And so the dealership is going to continue evolving. AI is completely shaking up things now. I would say for the better, if anything, for dealers, because they're simply able to offer a better experience, offer more targeted products and services for customers, waste less time. Consumers are getting a more consistent experience. So AI has definitely been doing a lot of good, but it's just moving all so quickly. And we don't really know if dealers will become, kind of new car fulfillment centers eventually. And just, then you'll also do service there and maybe buy some used cars, or what that future really looks like. I don't think the dealership model is going away, other than the fact that lobbying is super strong and all that. Like, let's put that aside for a second, even though it's a super important one. I simply think that manufacturers sometimes underestimate what it takes to be a successful retailer. Do they really want to carry all that balance sheet risk on our inventory risk on their balance sheet? I mean, there's many considerations, and it's been, tried many times. And frankly, Tesla is the only one that has really done a great job at it, or sure, maybe Rivian as well. But there's been plenty of examples on the legacy side that they simply have not been able to do it successfully with launching like a D2C or something, direct to consumer or something like that.
On the service side, are there exciting robotics companies that you think are going to get meaningful traction in the service departments of these dealerships? I imagine, we cover the robotics companies, the 1X's, the Figures, the Tesla Optimus, things like that. I'm not convinced that humanoid robots are going to be the ones in the sort of service bays doing the work, but maybe it's
They
other
already are. They already, well, not doing the work. So I actually invested in a company called Robo Tire, which
Mm.
went out of business. So that wasn't a good one. But they were literally like replacing tires on. They were replacing tires on vehicles in like I think Firestones or something. I
Mm.
guess the economics didn't work out there. But there's a company now, a robotics company, and I shouldn't say now. I'm pretty sure they're public already. They're part of a bigger company called Rich Tech, which I had them on my podcast, and they're literally transferring parts in the service center right from the parts counter to the technician.
Mm.
And this is live. You can literally see Rich Tech Robotics. It's pretty incredible. But again, saves a ton of time. Think about it. To technician, these are skilled trades. Maybe you're making like $50 an hour. I don't know how much you're making. Like, and to go each time grab the parts. I mean, it's extremely inefficient. And so these robots now are in service centers, transferring parts. I would say, I'm a fan of like the whole, vertically integrated kind of low NPS, high margin. I think Keith Boy is the one that was spoke about this. I think, but asking yourself like, what is the what part of the business has the lowest NPS and the highest margin? That's ripe for disruption. And it's pretty crazy how true that is because if you look at the car business, the lowest NPS in our business, Net Promoter Score is actually service,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the service department, and it's used car auctions.
Mm.
Surprisingly, now auctions are
yeah.
dealer to dealer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are also both are high margin businesses. Now, if you look what's happening on those two fronts, we're seeing a lot of just attempts at disrupting those two different businesses. So on the auction front, you're seeing all these kind of auction substitutes that have spawned up over the last couple of years. You actually mentioned a couple right there, Bring a Trailer, for example.
Yeah, I
which
wanted to
again,
get your kind of opinion
and
on.
by the way, that's not new. Bring a Trailer's not. They've been around for a while.
No, I know.
But they've gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah,
But just to kind of finish my thought there, so the bottom line is like you're also seeing a lot of disruption in service now, where all these AI companies are trying to create tech for dealership service departments to make them more efficient, more profitable, the better customer experience. And so I think that that's going to kind of work itself out over the next couple of years.
that makes sense. Talk about the online used car marketplace, specifically around collectibles. I don't have a good read right now on market share between, I've had success on Bring a Trailer. Every car enthusiast, looks at the platform and they're like, somebody needs to disrupt this, right? It's got a great community and this sort of rich data and history, but the actual experience, it feels very dated. Cars and Bids has this sort of amazing YouTube-driven marketing engine and Doug DeMuro. Who's winning there right now? Do you feel like Cars and Bids is gaining a real foothold? It's once you actually get it working, it's like the best business ever because you don't have to hold inventory and you're just clipping fees over and over and over.
Yeah.
But it's certainly highly competitive.
It's crazy that you said that. It feels like it's aging because I just spoke with a dealer maybe like 3 days ago who just discovered selling on Bring a Trailer, right? Like let that sink in. Not like it's crazy how adoption in this industry with these auctions. I mean, it just takes time because people are set in their ways. Things are working, and these auctions are like the original network effect, right? If you think about the auction, is all about how many people can you get? Can you get the highest concentration of the right type of dealers, right? The right buyers to purchase. Now, again, Bring a Trailer is consumer facing as well, so that's different. But you still need that really high concentration of the right shoppers to buy. So look, my take is that I think I don't know the specifics behind Cars and Bids today because it's evolving and Bring a Trailer. I can tell you like anecdotally, I hear about it the most from dealers. Take it for what it's worth. It just, if I tell you what's the buzz, I always hear dealers mentioning Bring a Trailer. I think that it's going to, it's unclear to me how these brands, not Bring a Trailer, but like the up and comers that came after like Cars and Bids, it's just unclear to me how they could maintain their margin long term and avoid really losing their business to the bigger players like the Bring a Trailer in the market. Because I just don't like you can only pump so much demand from your, having an audience is great because you're able to, send over demand and community and all that to your product, but that's not sustainable. At a certain point, you have to kind of, the business has to stand on its own feet, and that might get you started. I don't know how far that takes you. So I think the real question is, are they able to really solve a problem in the market in a unique way long term. I don't know. Like I haven't bought
Yeah.
on cars and bids. I've played around with the product.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's enough if there's enough demand for all of these because they're not the only ones. There's other ones that have popped up. It's sort of like
Yeah, and the
if
real
you're
the
an
real
automotive you go ahead.
the real network effect with Bring a Trailer, for those that aren't familiar, is it has the longest standing, most active community.
Yeah.
And if you're a collector and you have a unique car, you want to get it in front of the biggest possible audience to get the best possible
Correct.
price. And Bring a Trailer has so much leverage that people will sign up their car to sell, and it won't even necessarily be slated for auction for months sometimes. And so Cars and Bids has an opportunity to say, hey, we'll list your car next week. But then the challenge is if they don't have the same level of collectors on the platform, you're just not going to get the best price. And so they technically offer the same service, but they offer a worse service because they won't necessarily get the best price.
It's
so
still just a fantastic go-to-market strategy to seed a marketplace with a huge YouTube audience. But yes, there's the question
Yes,
of like,
that's
how do you
correct.
grow from there? You are kind of
Yep.
TAM constrained. He only has a few million viewers, and only so many of those can actually convert onto the platform. But I mean, he's done a great job just going full send and
look,
advertising on every single video.
I would say the biggest physical auction or traditional auctions, what they've done is, they've integrated other businesses. Now, I'm not telling you here that they've kind of given up on margin on the sales front, but they become lenders, right? So they floor your cars as like a line of credit. They do other services as well, which helps you kind of build a moat around your business. But it feels like every automotive YouTuber that gets an audience runs to like launch this auction marketplace.
Yep.
And I just don't know how many of those will really have staying power long term, or if it's going to end up being kind of like a winner takes all or winner takes most.
We will see.
Well
We'll have to
said.
check in with you in a couple months and see how it's
yeah,
developing.
anytime there's big car news, it'd be great to have you back on to break it down. And
This was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Now you guys are doing great work. Seriously, you guys are
Appreciate
definitely
it.
cutting through the noise. And I can tell you, it gave me a lot of like early CDG vibes because like you put up that like breaking news stuff the other day, and like that's how I got started. People just started sending me shit. They're like, "Oh, by the way, this dealer is out of business," and I just started posting that. People were calling me like the gossip girl of automotive, which I never wanted to be. But it's this thing where like all media in the future, in my opinion, or the winning media will be like expert led media, which is sort of what you're doing here. You're in the game, you're bringing people that are in the game to talk about things that are relevant to them. So I think it's really great and it's exciting.
Well,
It was
thank
great
you so
having
much
you.
for
Thanks
joining.
so much for stopping by.
Great to hang.
Thanks,
We'll talk
guys.
soon.